The House of Representatives has just passed a landmark stimulus bill, clearing the way for $5,400 in direct payments, and yes, the first payments are set to begin this Friday across all 50 states. In a surprise move that caught even senior economists off guard, the bill includes 4 special payout dates to ensure that seniors, low-income families, Social Security recipients, and those on SSI and SSDI don't get left behind. This is the largest direct financial aid package approved since the pandemic-era relief, and the urgency behind it is real. With inflation still biting into groceries, rent, and healthcare, lawmakers are calling this a targeted economic lifeline for struggling Americans. But who exactly qualifies for the $5,400? What are the official payment dates? And how can you make sure your check is processed without delay? Whether you're on Social Security, VA, SSI, or SSDI, or simply waiting for relief, this could be your moment. Stick with us as we break down the full payment schedule, eligibility rules, and what this means for you and your state. Let me start by addressing the scope of this bill. This is a nationwide initiative that will affect all 50 states, with the first wave of payments scheduled to begin this Friday. I know that might sound too good to be true, but I've spent the last several hours going through the actual bill documentation to bring you the most accurate and up-to-date information possible. This isn't about generating false hope or clickbait, this is about getting crucial information to those who need it most. The amount $5,400 represents one of the largest direct payments to Americans since the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. But what makes this stimulus package different is its structured release schedule, with 4 specific payout dates designed to help manage the economic impact and ensure smooth distribution. I'll be explaining exactly how these dates work and what you need to do to ensure you receive your payments on time. Now, let's talk about eligibility. Unlike previous stimulus packages, this one has been designed with a broader reach in mind. The income thresholds have been adjusted to account for inflation and the current economic climate. Single filers earning up to $75,000 annually will be eligible for the full amount, with the payment gradually phasing out for incomes up to $95,000. For joint filers, these thresholds are set at $150,000 and $190,000 respectively. This means more Americans will qualify for these payments compared to previous stimulus programs. One of the most significant aspects of this bill is its attention to families with dependents. There's additional support built in for those with children under 17, and for the first time, adult dependents aged 17-24 who are still in school will also be eligible for supplemental payments. This is a huge change from previous stimulus programs and acknowledges the financial burden many families face with college-age dependents. Let's dive into those 4 crucial payout dates. The first wave begins this Friday, targeting those who have direct deposit information already on file with the IRS from their most recent tax returns. This initial rollout is expected to reach approximately 30% of eligible recipients. The second payout date is scheduled for exactly 2 weeks after the first, focusing on Social Security recipients and those who receive VA benefits. The third payout date, coming 1 month after the initial rollout, will cover those who receive paper checks by mail. And finally, the fourth payout date, 6 weeks from the start, will handle any remaining eligible recipients and special cases that may have required additional processing. This staggered approach is designed to prevent the system overload we saw with previous stimulus distributions. Something I really want to emphasize here is the importance of having your current information up to date with the IRS. If you've moved recently or changed banks, you'll want to update this information as soon as possible. The IRS has already announced they'll be launching a special portal on their website where people can check their payment status and update their information if needed. Now, I know many of you are wondering about the verification process. The good news is that if you filed taxes in the last 2 years, you're already in the system and don't need to take any additional steps to verify your eligibility. However, if you haven't filed recently or if you're typically not required to file taxes due to income levels, there will be a separate process to ensure you can still receive your payment. I'll be covering that process in detail in just a moment. One aspect of this bill that hasn't received much attention in the mainstream media is its provisions for small business owners and self-employed individuals. If you fall into either of these categories, you'll want to pay special attention to this section. The bill includes specific considerations for how business income is calculated for eligibility purposes, which could affect your payment amount. Let's talk about the reasoning behind this stimulus package. The House passed this bill in response to several economic indicators showing continued strain on middle and lower income households. Rising inflation, although showing signs of cooling, has still left many Americans struggling with higher prices for essential goods and services. This stimulus package is designed not just as a band-aid solution, but as part of a broader economic recovery strategy. I want to address some concerns I've seen in the comments section of my previous videos about the impact of these payments on inflation. The bill's architects have actually built in several measures to minimize inflationary pressure. The staggered release schedule I mentioned earlier is part of this strategy, helping to prevent a sudden flood of money into the economy all at once. For those of you wondering about the tax implications of these payments, I have good news. Like previous stimulus payments, these will not be counted as taxable income. You won't need to report these payments on your next tax return, and they won't affect your tax refund or the amount you might owe. However, it's always a good idea to keep documentation of any government payments you receive. Now, let's discuss what makes this stimulus package particularly unique. Unlike previous payments, this one includes a financial literacy component. Recipients will have access to free online resources and tools to help make the most of their stimulus funds. This includes budgeting assistance, debt management strategies, and investment education. It's a recognition that giving people money is important, but helping them manage it effectively is equally crucial. The bill also includes provisions for those who are currently receiving unemployment benefits. If you're in this situation, you won't have to choose between your unemployment benefits and the stimulus payment. You're eligible for both. This is a significant change from some previous relief programs where receiving one type of benefit could affect eligibility for others. Let's talk about the timeline once these payments start going out. For those receiving direct deposits, the funds typically appear in accounts within 2-3 business days of the scheduled payment date. Paper checks take longer, usually 1-2 weeks from the mailing date. The IRS has upgraded its tracking system to provide more accurate delivery estimates, which should help reduce anxiety about when payments will arrive. One crucial aspect I want to highlight is the appeals process. If you believe you're eligible but don't receive a payment, or if you receive less than you think you should, there will be a straightforward process to appeal. The bill includes funding for additional IRS support staff to handle these appeals quickly and efficiently. This is a significant improvement over previous stimulus programs where getting issues resolved could take months. For those of you who have past due debts, there are important protections built into this bill. These stimulus payments cannot be garnished for most types of private debt collection. However, they can still be garnished for child support payments, which is consistent with previous stimulus programs. If you're concerned about garnishment, I'll be making a separate video diving deep into these protections and what you need to know. The international aspect of this stimulus package is also worth noting. If you're a U.S. citizen living abroad, you may still be eligible for these payments. The bill includes specific provisions for Americans living overseas, though the verification process might take longer. If you fall into this category, you'll want to make sure your foreign address is properly registered with the IRS. Let's address some common questions I've been seeing in the comments. Many of you have asked about what happens if you've recently changed your filing status, for example, if you got married or divorced in the past year. The bill includes provisions for these situations, and your eligibility will generally be based on your most recent tax filing status. However, there are some special considerations for recent changes that might affect your payment amount. Another frequent question concerns adult dependents who might have recently become independent. If you were claimed as a dependent on someone else's taxes last year but are now filing independently, there are specific guidelines about how your eligibility will be determined. The bill includes flexibility for these situations, recognizing that financial circumstances can change rapidly. For those of you who run small businesses or are self-employed, I want to elaborate on how this stimulus package might interact with other forms of government assistance you might be receiving. The bill has been carefully crafted to ensure that these payments don't disqualify you from other forms of aid or create unintended tax consequences for your business. One aspect that's particularly important for families is the additional support for childcare expenses. The bill recognizes that many parents have faced increased childcare costs, and there are supplemental provisions to help address this specific challenge. This is separate from but complementary to the main stimulus payment. Let's talk about the technology being used to distribute these payments. The IRS has significantly upgraded its system since previous stimulus rollouts, which should mean fewer delays and technical glitches. They've implemented new security measures to prevent fraud while making the process more user-friendly for legitimate recipients. For those of you who are concerned about scams, and you should be, let me be very clear about how the government will communicate with you about these payments. You will never be asked to pay a fee to receive your stimulus payment. The IRS will not call, text, or email you asking for personal information. All official communication will come through the mail, and you can verify everything through the official IRS website. The economic impact of these payments is expected to be significant. Economic analysts project that this injection of funds could help stabilize many households that are currently on shaky financial ground. While it's not a long-term solution to economic inequality, it represents an important step in providing immediate relief to those who need it most. I want to touch on the bipartisan nature of this bill's passage. While there was initially some resistance, the final version gained support from both sides of the aisle. This cooperation was largely driven by clear evidence of continued economic hardship across many American communities, regardless of political affiliation. Looking ahead, it's important to understand how these payments fit into the broader economic recovery strategy. While immediate relief is crucial, the bill also includes provisions for longer-term economic stability measures. This includes funding for job training programs and small business support that will be rolled out in the coming months. For those of you who have been following my channel's coverage of previous economic relief measures, you'll notice that this package represents a more sophisticated approach to stimulus distribution. The lessons learned from previous rollouts have clearly influenced the design of this program, particularly in terms of efficiency and accessibility. Now, let's discuss what you should do while waiting for your payment. First, make sure your banking and contact information is up to date with the IRS. Second, be patient. Even if you're in the first wave of recipients, it may take a few days for the payment to appear in your account. Third, be wary of any communications claiming to be about your stimulus payment that don't come directly from the IRS. If you found this information helpful, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with anyone who might benefit from knowing about these upcoming payments. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell to stay informed about any updates or changes to this stimulus program.